It was one of those mornings when the sky looked tired and gray, and yet somewhere beyond the clouds there was a promise of sunlight waiting to break through. She walked through the sliding glass doors of the airport, her small suitcase rolling, behind her and her 6-year-old daughter clutching her hand, her heart beating in a rhythm that had nothing to do with travel. She was late as usual. And yet the strange sense of anticipation inside her chest had nothing to do with missing a flight. She looked at the departures board, the letters flickering like tiny heartbeats, and she wondered if she was doing the right thing, leaving behind a city full of memories that had long turned heavy like stones. She told herself she was doing it for her daughter, for a fresh start, for a job that could finally pay the bills. But still her heart whispered another name, a name she had buried years ago beneath layers of time and pain and silence. Her daughter tugged her sleeve, asking for a snack, and she smiled, that tired mother smile that hides exhaustion and love. In equal measure, she guided her toward a cafe near Gate 23. And as they sat, she heard a laugh behind her, a laugh she had not heard in almost 10 years. It froze her mid-motion, her hand hovering over the juice bottle, and in that instant she felt the world tilt. She turned slowly, afraid her eyes were playing tricks. But there he was standing just a few feet away, phone in hand, his hair a little shorter, his jaw a little sharper, the same eyes, though the same deep brown eyes that once looked at her like she was his entire world. He looked older, more serious. But the moment their gazes met, the years fell away like dust, and her breath caught. She wanted to look away, but could not. He did not see her at first. He was talking to someone through his wireless earbuds, his voice calm, confident, commanding. She heard someone nearby whisper his name, Daniel Gray, CEO of Grayline Technologies. The name hit her like a shockwave, and she almost laughed at the irony. He had made it big. He was everything he once dreamed of becoming, while she had been learning to stretch paychecks and hide tears from her daughter. She thought maybe fate was mocking her. Her daughter asked again, for the juice, and that small innocent voice brought her back to the present. She opened the bottle, handed it to her child, and tried to calm the storm inside her. But fate has a cruel way of testing resolve, because a moment later, his call ended, and his eyes lifted, searching the crowd and landing right on her. He froze, and so did she. He stepped closer, disbelief flickering across his face. Emily. He said her name softly, and though the airport was filled with noise, it felt as if silence had wrapped around them. She wanted to run. She wanted to smile. She wanted to scream. She managed only a whisper. Daniel and her daughter looked up, curious, asking, "Mommy, who is he?" And that question hung between them like fragile glass, ready to shatter. He smiled, though it was not the carefree smile she remembered. It was gentler, touched with something like regret. He crouched down to her daughter's height and said, "Hello, little one." You have your mother's eyes, and Emily's heart skipped, because there was no way he could know that was true. Her daughter did have her eyes and her laughter and her stubbornness, and maybe something of him too. They moved to a quieter corner near the big glass windows, watching planes taxi and take off. The conversation stumbled like two people walking through memories too sharp to touch. He told her he had just flown in from Singapore meetings, investors, boardrooms, the kind of world that felt galaxies away from her own. She told him she worked part-time at a local library, that she was raising her daughter alone, that life was messy but real. He listened the way he always did, eyes steady like he could see right through the walls she had built. He asked about the father, and for a moment, the air grew heavier. She said softly, "He's not in the picture." And Daniel's jaw tightened ever so slightly. She could see questions forming behind his eyes, but she wasn't ready to answer them. Not yet. Not when her pulse still remembered the rhythm of his touch, not when the years between them suddenly felt too short, too fragile. A boarding call echoed through the speakers. She checked her ticket and realized they were on the same flight. Her heart tripped again. What were the odds, she wondered, or maybe the universe had been planning this all along, because sometimes second chances don't knock. They collide on the plane. Fate seated them across the aisle. He smiled at her daughter, offered her a chocolate from the minibar, and soon the little girl was giggling, telling him stories about school and cartoons and the cat they had left with Grandma. Emily watched them, her throat tightening. It was too easy, too natural. too much like something she had dreamed of on sleepless nights and told herself to forget. Halfway through the flight, turbulence hit a sudden jolt that made passengers gasp. The seatbelt sign blinked, and Emily instinctively reached across the aisle, gripping Daniel's hand. His palm warmed steady, and when the shaking stopped, she pulled back embarrassed, but he didn't let go. He simply looked at her and said softly, "It's all right, you're safe." And something in her chest cracked wide open, because those were the words he used to say when life hurt. Too much. When they landed, the sun had broken through the clouds, spilling gold over the runway as they walked toward baggage claim. She felt like she was walking in a dream, her daughter skipping ahead, and Daniel walking beside her in silence until he said, "I never stopped looking for you." She froze again, not sure she had heard right. He continued, "I came back to our town years ago, but you were gone. Your number changed. Your mother moved away. I thought maybe you didn't want to be found." Her voice trembled when she said, "I thought you left me, Daniel. You left for New York without a word." He looked at her stunned, and then something like pain crossed his face. "Emily, I wrote. I called. I even came back. You never answered." And in that moment, realization dawned between them. Her ex-stepfather, who had once hated Daniel, must have intercepted those letters. Those calls. It was too late to fix the past. But the truth still hurt. Her daughter tugged her hand again, asking for the restroom, and Emily went, leaving Daniel by the carousel. When she returned, he was gone for a moment. Panic flared. But then she saw him at a nearby cafe, ordering 3 coffees, one for her, one for himself, 1 hot chocolate, extra marshmallows for the child. She laughed quietly, because of course he remembered she used to love marshmallows too. They sat together waiting for her connecting bus to the new city, and he asked about her plans. She told him she had been offered a job as an assistant librarian, stable hours, health insurance, a chance to breathe again. He nodded, but his eyes were far away, thoughtful. Then he said softly, "What if there's another option?" And she frowned, confused, until he added, "I could use someone like you at Grayline. Someone I trust." But she shook her head, smiling. "That's your world, Daniel, not mine." He looked at her daughter and said, "Maybe it could be ours." Her heart tripped again, because in his tone there was no pity, only possibility. And that scared her more than anything, because she wanted to believe him. She wanted to imagine a life that didn't feel like surviving. She wanted to stop pretending she was fine when every night she missed being seen. Truly seen. The announcement came. The bus boarding call. She stood, clutching her ticket, trying to say goodbye, but the words tangled. He stepped closer, just near enough for her to feel the warmth radiating off him. He said quietly, "I'll be in your city next week. Maybe we could talk." She hesitated, then nodded, unable to trust her voice, and as she turned to leave, her daughter ran back, hugged Daniel around the legs, and said, "I like you, mister. You make mommy smile." And that broke whatever composure Emily had left. On the bus, she sat by the window, watching him through the glass. He stood there, hands in pockets, watching the bus pull away, and she could swear she saw the same question in his eyes that echoed in her own. What if it's not too late? That night, in a small rented apartment, she lay awake, her daughter asleep beside her, the city humming outside. She opened her phone, curiosity winning over caution. She searched his name, articles, photos, interviews. CEO of Grayline Tech, Forbes cover man of the year, and yet in every picture, his smile never reached his eyes. She closed the phone, whispering to the dark, "Maybe that's because of me." A week later, she was shelving books at the library when a small crowd gathered by the door, whispering. She looked up and her breath caught. Daniel stood there, suit crisp, tie loosened, holding 2 cups of coffee and a small white envelope. He smiled, that same half smile, and said, "I told you I'd find you." She wanted to scold him for showing up at her job, for making her heart race like that. But all she could do was laugh quietly, because it felt impossible and perfect all at once. He handed her the envelope. Inside were plane tickets, 3 of them, and a note that said, "Paris conference, 2 weeks. Bring your daughter. Maybe we can start again." She looked up, speechless, and he said, "You don't have to decide now, just know the door is open." She could feel tears stinging her eyes, because after years of closed doors, here was one finally open wide. 2 weeks later, she stood again at an airport. The same sky, the same hum of engines, but this time her heart was lighter. Her daughter ran ahead wearing a tiny backpack, excitement bubbling, and beside her Daniel carried the luggage, joking about lost passports and bad airplane food. She smiled because it didn't feel like a movie. It felt real messy, hopeful, uncertain, but real as they boarded the plane. She thought about everything that had happened the years apart, the silence, the pain, and how somehow the universe had brought them full circle. She turned to Daniel.